So how you doing? We're waiting on another truck, setting up the dryer, and my mind wanders. I thought of a little visual aid as I went by the tile to explain the shapes, and got two different stands of wheat out here. So the exterior is 7.5-inch wheat with the radishes. This is following corn. The radishes, you know, this was high intensive corn. There might be a little residual nitrogen left over from last year's fall manure or the late Y drops. So the radishes will help absorb that, close a quicker canopy. But when we have wheat close like this, so this pipe is about 62 inches wide here. Our wheat heads, I can straighten this out here, are going to orient straight, okay, across the whole thing. It's a tabletop. So that's why, you know, really if you want to maximize wheat, you need more seeds, because the T1 tiller is going to dominate because it's going to grab the sun. So the answer to high management, high yield wheat is completely on the different end of the spectrum of what we're trying to do out here. I've got a little tape measure here. So the 1 + 1 = 2 business math mentality, you know, what you accomplished in 6th or 7th grade, is really what dominates agriculture sometimes. We just worry about yield, inputs, commodity prices. But right here we've got 60-inch wheat, which sounds crazy. From here to here, 60 inches wide. But in the individual row, we've got about 12 to 13 inches wide. But what this is going to allow us to do is we're going to make the most out of every day in the calendar. So putting the manure underneath is going to accelerate growth without growing degree units. So we're stretching the latter part of the season out like jumping on a cheetah in the Serengeti. It's just going to go fast even if we have temperatures stuck in the 40s. But what that's going to do, the wheat in this buckshot pattern is going to have more space for each individual plant, and it's going to have a white boot on it, which is tillers. And every plant out here is going to be a little bit different in its environment. Where they're closer together, like these guys right here, might only get 3 or 4 tillers, but you get a guy that's got a little bit more space, it's going to have 15, 20, 30 tillers. So the actual spatial configuration is going to be relatively irrelevant, because the space, the 60 inches, is going to allow the lower leaves of that wheat to completely capture sunlight next year, when we're waiting for the soil to warm up enough for the seed to germinate. You know, we don't get a stand of crops here in central Indiana. You don't see it green in the field till mid to late May, but this will start warming up in February, and I'll have that manure underneath. But here's the bottom line. We change the architecture of how this wheat will grow. So this same pipe that I stretched out, that's 60 inches, when it's orientated in a half a circle, these bottom wheat will stretch out about 25 inches. This whole 63 inches will be wheat heads, and that's how we can get nearly comparable yields with 15 to 20% of the seed, with no nitrogen, with no P&K, just localized manure, tillered wheat that's accelerated in the fall. That's how we can get similar wheat yields. But when we take these half a circles, now when we're talking about solar angles, you put this here and this 60 inches away, now we can get sun infiltration down to be able to start a soybean plant, and it has enough sun for photosynthesis to grow vigorous. And now the wheat is actually helping the beans out in multiple things. In the eastern corn belt, we have a lot of storm systems that move to the west of us. We get a lot of moisture. It's very rare that we dry out, you know, in the early springtime, and this wheat will actually consume the excess moisture. Beans don't like dry feed, especially early. If you want a solid, even stand of soybeans, you need to get that moisture out of the ground, either through drainage. James, if you're watching, you're the man with that. But if this field right here combines good drainage, good soil, and when we get the wheat out here, it's going to consume that excess moisture. The other thing that'll help is we get a thermal equity here. So if it takes so many growing degree units to actually get that soybean up, and until it opens up the cotyledons and it opens that first growing point, that fluffy first leaf, then it's susceptible to frost. But it takes so many growing degree units for that to happen, and by that time the wheat will be up here nice and tall, and it'll bottle in that heat a little bit. So down here at the surface will be warmer than if it was out in the open, out in the wind, out where colder air could settle in. So we can plant the soybeans a little bit earlier. By getting wider, we don't have to worry about the wheat encroaching, being so wide, and now we can get intensive cropping with 2 different cash crops. But the whole beauty and why we're really pushing this, in my context, we have all this manure, so you either have to pay for the dragline, which is about $0.01 a gallon. If you're going to corn, you lose most of your nitrogen. We can lower that rate underneath the wheat, and now we can establish a wheat crop for, you know, less than $20. Now we'll decide what we want to do in the spring, whether it be a fungicide. We're going to have to put some dicamba down, but that's the other beauty in this system as well. On corn, our herbicide program usually comes in that V2 to V4 stage, and then we use the corn to back up the shortstop, and canopy handles the weed pressure. Well, we really battle around here with water hemp and our soybeans because it takes so long to close that canopy in the soybeans. We could drill and put them in 15-inch rows, but then we have lodging issues in high fertile ground to really rush the canopy. But with this, the wheat and the soybeans take in all the sunlight, so that dicamba that we can apply here right at wheat joint, which is usually in mid-April, put that layer of dicamba down, the beans are coming up, they're bred to take it in, and now we lock up canopy so we can get by with just that one herbicide application. And if you got good ground you take care of and don't have a lot of weed pressure, that might be all that you take down. It's 22 inches of Extendamax, 22 ounces, which is about $10 an acre. So if that's all our nitrogen, all our phosphorus, and our wheat seeds at 15%, this is just some time to compromise a cheap system to grow a bushel of wheat for as cheap as possible for above ground pattern tile, and change the angles of relay cropping like you're looking to where we can actually fit more sun capture when we start changing the angles of the way that the sun is going to be caught. You got to think beyond straight lines. You got to think beyond just May to September. We accelerate growth in the fall. We wake it up earlier in the spring. The thing I haven't talked about, I talked about a lot, is the radishes are going to absorb this manure, grow vigorously, outcompete the winter annuals. We got a little bit of oats in here for the mycorrhizal action to really get going. And this is what's really going to give these wheat the jumper cables to really get going in February. I saw it last year where we had the radishes. The wheat woke up in that February warm up and was off to the races. So you get the fall tillering, you get the spring tillering, and the tillerings are actually viable because those tillers aren't below the thatch layer that you'll see in the solid wheat. They have plenty of sunlight on both sides to capture sunlight, and every tiller that comes up is going to put some form of head, but that head is going to be bigger because it's got direct access to this sloppy pig shit underneath here, which has plenty of phosphorus and all these micros and biological stimulants that you can't buy with commercial fertilizer. All right, I think I've rambled on enough, but to say that I'm super excited is an understatement. I was nervous that this wouldn't work. You know, anytime you don't use that traditional planter, traditional drill, you don't know what's going to happen, but we've got the stand. It's got the fertility. It's going to be pretty fun to watch. It's going to get 70 tomorrow, so it's really going to green up. But anyway, thanks for watching.